This is Greg Troutline with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're very pleased to be joined today by David Lee, ABB Marine and Ports, to discuss the ABB technology solutions for the growing offshore wind vessel market. When you look at the offshore wind potential in the U.S. today, what do you see?
Offshore wind it's a very dynamic market, right? And again, when I talk about these things, it's kind of a global perspective, but then as you say in the US, we're trying to really figure out which way is the best way, right? And there's a huge potential. The East Coast with your standard offshore wind turbines, the West Coast where we start looking at floating offshore wind, the Gulf itself, there's potential there as well. So really what we see is it's one of those markets that could just explode, right? I had a conversation this morning with some others saying we also need to temper those at the same time. It's a very political thing. It's definitely the way we need to go for the sustainable future, right? But there's only a certain amount that we can actually do in the U.S. In my past, I was in the shipyard, so I'm very familiar with what everybody refers to as the Jones Act, right? Which really creates a brand new market in the U.S. at the same time. We've never done this. And doing things in the U.S. is always expensive, right? And definitely we always say, once you move something from on land to on shore, just put a multiplication behind it and whatever number you want, right? It's just always expensive to do on the vessel side. So what we're looking at is really what are the different needs going to be, and really what is the most efficient way that we're going to get this offshore wind installed. We see many out there, feeder barges, feeder vessels, the WTIVs itself, with Dominion building one in Keppel, it was quite a surprise that someone actually took a step to build one of those. But we don't see that as really the leading method here, right? We see it more of that feeder type system. And then once you get to that, then the question is on the SOV market that is really huge around the world, the service operation vessels that are required to service all these offshore winds. Really, what is the need there? I mean, there's numbers all over the place. A lot of these offshore wind farms are not that far out. So is there a need to stay out for a very long time, or can you come back to port more frequently? So all that's to say is, I think we're still trying to figure that out, but there is definitely a huge potential here in the US for the offshore wind market.
When talk turns to the specific technology, can you give a full scope and overview of what ABB Marine and Ports offers in this space?
So first of all, in offshore wind, our leader when it comes to SOVs is onboard DC grid. DC grid is a vessel power plant system that is really designed around new energy that we see today on vessels, right? The old traditional AC systems for diesel electric, they were great. And what they were diesel generators going to electric motors. Today, though, it's not just diesel generators. Any of the vessel designs that we see lead with battery installed for sure. And then we also start to see fuel cells showing up. And when you look at these vessel designs, it's all around that sustainability, right? You can't install offshore wind and utilize a traditional old diesel powered vessel, right? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't go hand in hand with what the goal of offshore wind is, right? So when it comes to onboard DC grid, we developed that product in order to bring all these different types of new energy systems together in an efficient manner. And it's funny, my colleagues make fun of me all the time, but I say, I don't care what the power source is. It could be battery, it could be hydrogen fuel cells, it could be the flux capacitor from Back to the Future, right? The DC grid systems it's enabled to utilize that power in an efficient manner to get the propellers, right? So that's first. And then the second, when it comes to technology, is our digital and our automation offerings. That is really what brings efficiency into these vessels, right? Our ABB ability system, on top of it, we call it our octopus system, which kind of the overlying the technology, the brains behind what you're doing when it comes to DP2, when it comes to trip planning. So we can do auto trip planning where it gives guidance to the captains now. If I'm going to leave port and I need to head out to a turbine, at that point in time, I can put that into the computer and it can tell me what particular speed I need to get out there for a certain efficiency, as well as we can look at wind, waves to say, hey, don't just motor, don't leave now, leave a little bit later, because you're going to just go out there and sit in DP forever. You're just going to burn fuel, you're going to burn your batteries. So we're seeing that really make these operations much, much more efficient, as well as safe. We have auto docking systems. So when you look at going to the dock or going to the wind turbine itself, you can just hit a button, like kind of like I do in my wife's Explorer, right? And now a 16-year-old, when they go to get their license, I'm not sure how they fail the test with the system in there. But that's where those systems really bring the safety and efficiency back to things. And what we do is we use onboard DC grid, our automation and digital offerings to be the full system integrator. We have supplied the batteries, the hydrogen fuel cells for systems, thrusters. We can take that whole propulsion plant and put it under the ABB umbrella as a one system provider for the vessel owner.
During our recent webinar, you discussed the hybrid SOV Wind of Change project. Can you give an overview of that vessel with insights on the ABB Tech Found Inside?
Of course, yeah, and just so the audience understands, the Wind of Change is out there today. Right behind it, the operator has so much trust and understanding behind that vessel. The Wind of Hope is hopefully to be delivered this year. So with that vessel, it does have energy storage. It has battery installed in it with DC grid and automation systems like I talked about before. But what's interesting, in just like the cable layer NKT Victoria that we have our systems in, is what you start seeing when I talked before about those energy storage systems and the efficiency that it brings to these vessels. So now you, instead of having all your generators online while you're sitting out in DP, just for spinning reserve, you have a battery there. So you can start shutting generators down. So your diesel use at that point really starts lowering itself back down. And with the Wind of Change, we're seeing this in so many other different designs, which are, by the way, all European in origin. That's every single SOV that I've seen in the US so far is a European designer in one way or another. But we see more energy storage being installed in these vessels. And again, just like I said before, the DP mode that you have, you can then start looking at zero port operations. So just like the Northeast US, it's a very busy area. And you see what happens when in Manhattan, you have all those people and all those cars in one area, right? Think about this brand new fleet that's going to come to the Northeast. So when we start seeing goals in New York, California on zero emissions in ports, it's going to come quick. So as you start seeing energy storage, you're going to see really a push to getting to that zero emission port. So with the Wind of Change, it was just the start of that kind of movement when it comes to energy storage. And again, I've seen many different versions of it throughout the US, as well as that increase in energy storage. So it really just comes back to sustainability and what not only the operator is looking for, but the developer at the same time. Again, you have to be sustainable in this business because you are installing that offshore wind, and it doesn't make sense otherwise.
Okay. Dave, I truly appreciate your insights. I look forward to following up with you again as the market develops.
Great. Greg, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate it, and hope to talk soon.